In the beginning, there was silence, but silence never lasts forever. They arrived without warning. No war, no diplomacy, just a presence that never left. For decades, we have been in denial. We hide. We lie. Now, time is up. It's no longer about are we alone. It's about what they want and what are we willing to do to survive. What if I told you that maybe we were never alone? From the first glance at the sky, we search for faces in the stars, answers hidden in the cold of infinity. We call it chance, we call it noise, we call it misreading. But some echoes always return. There are lights that don't obey, shadows that move where there shouldn't be movement, signals that traverse time like ancient whispers. Machines without imagination record the impossible. And yet, we persist in doubting. Maybe the question was never, is there anyone out there? Maybe it was, why did it take us so long to notice? Because there are footprints in the dust of dead worlds, molecules that shouldn't be where they are, silences that sound like messages when we learn to listen. We observe the cosmos, but what if the cosmos has always observed us? What if our story is just a chapter in something much larger, written by hands other than our own? It's not fear, it's recognition. The feeling that we've been found before we even knew to look. So I repeat, what if we were never alone? Deep down, you already know the answer. The universe is not empty. It breathes, and today it breathes here. For decades, science looked at Mars as just a red desert, dead, cold, silent. But something changed. First came the robots, with eyes of glass and hearts of code. They tore through the ancient dust and found traces, scars of rivers that no longer flow. Valleys carved by water that no longer exists on the surface. Photographs that seemed to whisper, here, once, something flowed. Then the sensors began sniffing the thin air. Methane, spikes that appear, disappear, and reappear like an irregular pulse. On Earth, this gas usually has a living signature. On Mars, it's an enigma that breathes for seconds and remains silent for years. From underground came an even older rumor. Organic molecules preserved as chemical fossils. Pieces of a recipe we know well, the basis of life. It's not proof, it's provocation. It's the universe raising an eyebrow. And beneath the ice, the possibility of saline lakes, hidden from radiation. Like secret chambers where time moves slowly, refuges, sanctuaries, liquid silence. Rocks tell stories when you listen. Minerals that only form with water. Sediments settled like pages in a Martian book. On each page, the chance of a name we don't yet know how to pronounce. Mars no longer seems dead. It seems asleep. It's not a cemetery, it's an archive. Perhaps we won't find stone cathedrals, nor artifacts gleaming beneath the sand. Perhaps we'll find something smaller, fossilized microbes, chemical patterns, a residue that proves that solitude isn't the rule, it's the exception. For decades, we called Mars a desert. Today, we call it a runway, and every clue points to the same question. If life could begin there, why would it stop here? Scientists whispered. Robots sent data that no one can fully explain. In the cold corridors of the laboratories, reports arrived with penciled notes, circled doubts, question marks next to numbers that shouldn't exist. Anomaly, they wrote. Then, replicate. And when they tried to repeat it, the phenomenon vanished as if something on the other side sensed it was being observed. The robots spoke in the only language they know. Sequences, pulses, spectra. Small variations that too many are noise. But to those who have learned to listen, sound like a pattern. Spikes that appear out of nowhere and fade like a sigh. Chemical traces that appear in layers of rock that don't match the official story. Images that, at first glance, are just stone until you notice lines, textures, symmetries that you wouldn't expect from chance. And then the whispers grew louder. Some called for silence, some preferred to file it away. But the data kept coming, stubborn, repetitive, insistent, as if an entire planet were trying to say something, without a voice, without a language, only with signs, and perhaps, with a patience too ancient to fit into our reports. And now, the question has returned with a vengeance. Is there, or has there ever been, life on Mars? It doesn't arrive as a scream. It arrives as an ancient echo, piercing dust, ice, and silence. With each layer of exposed rock, each suspicious molecule, each pulse of gas that appears and disappears like a secret barely told. The question returns more clearly, more insistently. If it existed, where does this memory sleep? In dust grain-sized fossils trapped in sediments that were once lake beds? In chemical patterns that trace, in the dark, the shadow of a metabolism? In cold caves, shielded from radiation, where time doesn't flow, it accumulates? If it exists now, how does it hide? Beneath the ice, breathing slowly, dissolved in deep brines, so discreet it confuses our sensors? Or spread in biosignatures so subtle that our vocabulary still can't name them? Perhaps the answer isn't an explosive yes, nor a comforting no. Perhaps it's an almost, a here, a take a closer look. Because a planet that once had rivers, lakes, and a less harsh climate is just a setting its context. And context, in science, often points the way. So we return to Mars with more patient machines, more trained eyes, more humble questions. Not to prove a myth, but to listen carefully. Because in the end, the question is just about Mars. It's about us, about what we call life, about what we accept as proof, about how ready we are to acknowledge companionship. Is there, or has there ever been, life on Mars? The planet doesn't respond in words. It responds in clues. And clues, when added together, become stories. And most importantly, what are they hiding from us? These aren't spaceships in broad daylight, nor creatures in the headlines. What's hidden is more subtle. It's hidden between the lines of reports, in footnotes, in charts that seem innocent until you realize what's been cut out. It's the silence between two conference calls. It's the hurried no comment. It's the experiment that worked and was renamed inconclusive. What they hide isn't an answer. It's a dangerous doubt that perhaps we've already seen enough to suspect, and that suspicion, for some, is unacceptable. They hide the margins, the deviations, the data that don't fit into the comfortable narrative of the dead desert. Because admitting the strange requires courage, and courage sometimes disrupts agendas. They hide the context, the photo that only makes sense when you see the others, the methane spike that was discarded without revealing the surrounding noise, the sample that changed its name. After a change in interpretation, they hide the missing word, not proof, but possibility. Perhaps they hide from us what they fear most in themselves, recognition. The idea that life isn't a rare exception, but rather an insistence of the universe. Because if that's true, everything we know about loneliness changes. So what are they hiding? Not a final secret, but the courage to look again. To say, this doesn't add up, let's open it up. To accept that the truth doesn't arrive ready-made. It bleeds through the cracks. And right now, Mars is full of cracks. The experiments yielded positive results, but NASA itself dismissed them as mistakes. They called chemistry what some dared to call life. They said, soil reactions, aggressive oxidants, laboratory artifacts. They blamed the invisible peroxide in the dust, the accumulated radiation, the limited sensitivity of the instruments. They explained the curves that rose and fell as if they were nothing more than stone breathing. In the reports, they replaced astonishment with caution. Where it had previously read signal, it now read anomaly. Where it had read response, it became noise. The word mistake served as a thick blanket. It smothered the fire, but didn't extinguish it. Because, deep down, the data didn't go away. They remained uncomfortable, stubborn, a reminder that the sand reacted, that the gas was released, that something responded when no one expected a response. And the question that echoes ever since is simple and brutal. Was it science being prudent? Or was it the fear of being right too soon? Perhaps they didn't dismiss a discovery. Perhaps they postponed acceptance. And time, patiently, continues to rub this scar. If it was a mistake, why does the echo still haunt us? Why? Why deny such a discovery? Because science fears error, and rightly so. False positives have ruined reputations, diverted funds, and delayed decades of research. Faced with a signal that could be life, or simply reactive soil chemistry, the conservative decision was to raise the shield of skepticism. Because Vikings' instruments contradicted each other. One experiment whispered maybe, while the other screamed no. And when the data don't sing in unison, the rule is silence until the score is rewritten. Because there was fear of contamination, of artifacts, of interpreting dust as a pulse. And there was the weight of a mantra that seems prudent, but sometimes becomes a prison. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The extraordinary knocked on the door. They asked him to return with more documents, because politics is involved in telescopes. A hasty headline can cost credibility, funding, and future missions. It can turn science into spectacle, and spectacle into discredit. Better to postpone than to risk everything. And perhaps because accepting the possibility of life on Mars changes the map of who we are, it forces us to revise books, theories, and philosophical boundaries. Not everyone is in a hurry to cross that line. Denying WASP erasing, it was pushing it to later, and later arrived in the form of new robots, new sensors, new questions. What they called a mistake became a guiding wound. It hurt, but it pointed the way. Decades later, rovers like Curiosity and Perseverance began to reveal something disturbing. Curiosity descended into Gale Crater like a patient archaeologist. In the layers of fossilized mud, it found preserved organic molecules, chemical traces that, on Earth, often border on life. It sniffed the air and felt pulses of methane that ebb and flow like a faint heartbeat. It's not proof, it's a whisper, but repeated whispers become a pattern. Meanwhile, Perseverance landed in Jezero, a fossilized delta of an ancient lake. Rounded rocks, fan-shaped sediments, a pattern only water can create. It's instruments' eyes that see the invisible skinned waterborne minerals, textures reminiscent of ancient riverbank deposits, and in some places, chemical signatures worthy of saving as samples for return to Earth. Each sealed tube is a ticket to the future. Open this carefully. Both found a Mars that was once kinder, stable water, environments that could sustain complex chemistry, perhaps even a timid metabolism hidden underground. And when the dust settles, what remains is the uneasy feeling that the red desert is empty. It's an archive. Curiosity reads the oldest pages. Perseverance collects those that could change history. What's disturbing isn't seeing ruins. What's disturbing is perceiving coherence. A lake, a delta, aqueous minerals, organic matter, gas pulses. Clues that, isolated, are intriguing. Together, they form a sentence that Mars seems to write slowly. Take a closer look. I have a memory. Organic molecules, traces preserved like chemical fossils, trapped in rocks that were once mud. They don't say life out loud, but they whisper possibility. They are loose letters of an ancient alphabet, waiting for us to string together the right syllables. Methane, a pulse in the thin air, a breath that appears and disappears as if it doesn't want to be seen. On Earth, it almost always comes from something breathing, fermenting, living. On Mars, it's an enigma with its own timetable. It appears, disappears, reappears, like a heartbeat we haven't yet learned to measure. Strange structures, lines, textures, layers drawn by water that no longer flows in daylight, cracks that resemble doorways, columns that seem intentional, patterns where we swore there was chaos, perhaps pareidolia, perhaps mineral memory, or perhaps a hint that chance has less freedom than we imagined. 3 tracks, 3 voices, the same sentence written slowly. Look again. Because if there are ingredients, there is a recipe. If there is breath, there is rhythm. If there is form, there is history. And Mars is full of stories we still don't know how to pronounce. All this on a supposedly dead planet. Dead things don't pulse. Dead things don't store chemical recipes in their rocks. They don't exhale breaths that appear and disappear. They don't draw lakeshores in ancient stone. Dead things don't organize minerals into layers that tell the story of water. They don't whisper patterns that defy our haste. The silence of Mars isn't final, it's archival. We call it a desert because it's easier. But if you put your ear to the dust, there's a low murmur, a remnant of warmth in the cold pages. A planet that was once softer, that perhaps still breathes beneath the ice, that responds when we poke at its secrets with machines. Presuming itself dead, it continues to emit signals. And signals, when they persist, cease to be coincidence and become an invitation. Take a closer look. What is Mars trying to tell us? That water left signatures on the stones, and that signatures don't forge themselves. That there are organic molecules stored like letters never sent. That a whiff of methane appears and disappears as if testing whether we're paying attention. That its silence isn't empty, it's a dramatic pause. Perhaps Mars is saying, I was different once, warmer, more humid, more welcoming. I had time, and if there was time and ingredients, there were chances. Chances for chemistry to become habit, for habit to become life even if small. Timid, buried, listen carefully. In the layers of fossilized mud, he whispers memory in the dark crevices. He suggests shelter in the petrified deltas. He draws the word before. What Mars tells is not a final secret, it is an invitation. Come back, dig deeper. Bring questions that don't fit in headlines, because some answers don't scream, they breathe slowly. If you also feel that the truth is closer than ever, stay here with us. Hit the like button now and subscribe to Curionauta's. It's not for vanity. It's a mission. Each new subscriber brings this topic to more people and keeps alive the kind of questions most prefer to keep quiet. Turn on the bell so you don't miss the next episodes, because what's coming could change the way you see the universe, and it's part of the investigation. Comment on what you saw, what intrigued you, what you think we're missing. Your curiosity fuels ours. Share this video with someone you know will be thrilled by these clues. This is just a channel, it's an open-air laboratory. If you feel this way too, welcome to the team. Leave your like and subscribe to Curionauta's. It's not just a button, it's the fuel that keeps this investigation alive. When you support now, the algorithm delivers that topic to more curious minds, and the conversation grows. Turn on the bell so you don't miss the next chapters, because the data that's coming could be a game changer. Let us know what you think and what you'd like to see next. This is just a channel, it's our crew. If it makes sense to you, come on board with us, because here we don't accept easy answers. It's easy to say it's just rock. It's easy to call noise what challenges our calm. We prefer the long way, opening layer by layer, comparing, testing, making mistakes, going back and asking again. If the explanation can't handle two questions in a row, it's no good. If the data doesn't add up, we don't force it, we investigate. Curionauts don't seek comfort, they seek coherence. And if the truth is hidden in a tiny crack, that's where we'll shine the flashlight. And this video can change the way you see the entire universe. Not because it brings absolute truths, but because it gives you new questions, the kind that keep you awake at night. When you look at Mars with these clues in hand, stars stop being decoration and become context. Suddenly, cosmic solitude doesn't seem so right. Get ready after seeing this. You'll never look at the sky the same way again, and perhaps never again accept small answers to giant mysteries. In 2018, NASA announced the discovery of organic molecules preserved for billions of years. They weren't fossils of creatures, they were fossils of chemistry. Fragments of carbon trapped in rocks that were once mud in the ancient crater of a lake. Pieces of a primordial alphabet stored in the red silence as if waiting for someone to decipher the message. This doesn't say life out loud. It says something more subtle: conditions. It says that Mars had income, had time, had shelter, that the question is just was there. It's where to look for the next chapter. When the robot scratched the rock, and the rock responded with organics, the universe didn't scream, it whispered. A whisper that cut through decades of skepticism to remind us, if the ingredients survived the dessert, perhaps the story they tell did too. These molecules are the basis of life as we know it. They're not creatures, they're alphabets. With them, nature writes membranes, proteins, energy, and memory wherever they appear. Chemistry ceases to be chance and becomes possibility. They say that, at some point, there was carbon available, water nearby, and enough time for reactions to repeat themselves until they became a habit. On a cosmic scale, this is like finding a dead campfire. You can't see the flames, but you can smell the burning in the rocks. And when the smell is there, the question changes tone. It's not was there a fire, it's when and where did it burn the hottest. What's more, they were found in a crater that was once a lake. Imagine an ancient, still body of water, where sediments fell like dusty snow, layer upon layer. For thousands of years, on the shores of this fossilized lake, time turned to stone, and the stone held clues. Fan-shaped deltas, striations that betray currents, minerals that only rise when the water insists. It is there, in this bed of memory, that the molecules appeared, trapped like insects in geological amber. A lake signifies stability, cycles, energy, nutrients, shelter from cold and radiation. It means that Mars wasn't just a desert. It had seasons, shores, and depth. And if there was such a favorable before, then each grain of rock in that crater could be a page, and each page A paragraph of the story that life loves to write when given time and water. A lake on Mars, with water. Time, and maybe life. Think of what this means. A calm surface reflecting an ancient sky, cycles of day and night, minerals slowly forming, molecules meeting insistently. The shores, a shelter, the bottom, a safe. In each season, a new layer of dust and promise. Chemistry repeating rituals until it becomes custom brushing against the edge of what we call life. If life loves opportunities, there it was. It didn't need to be grandiose, it just needed to be stubborn. Shy microbes, a discrete metabolism. Biofilms clinging to rocks, like a nearly invisible signature. And when the lake dried up, the desert covered the memory with silence. But silence doesn't erase, it preserves. A lake on Mars, it's not enough for those who seek myths. It's everything for those who understand clues. Water, time, repetition. The universe usually provides the rest. The Curiosity rover detected sudden spikes in methane. It was like smelling something in the air, and when you turned your head away, it disappeared. At certain moments, the sensors detected a rapid increase of breath that shouldn't have been there in such a cold, rarefied world. Then, silence. The gas vanished as if it had hidden itself in the cracks of the planet itself. On Earth, methane often bears the signature of life swamps, microorganisms, biological processes. It can also originate from crushed rocks, from mineral friction releasing ancient molecules. On Mars, each peak is an enigma with its own clock. It appears, intrigues, and vanishes before we can pinpoint its origin. It's an irregular beat, a rhythm that suggests something chemical or biological is still happening. The most disturbing thing isn't the quantity, it's the behavior, brief, localized emergences, almost like leaks from a slowly breathing subsurface. If it's chemistry, it reveals a planet more active than we thought. If it's biology, then we're not just studying ruins, we're hearing a whisper from the now. On Earth, about 90% of methane comes from living organism swamps, microbes fermenting organic matter, animal guts, entire ecosystems breathing in unison. It's a gas that, here, often smells of life. But methane can also be born without biology. Reactions in olivine-rich rocks, water seeping into the hot subsurface, serpentinization, ancient volcanism releasing pockets trapped in the past. That's why when Mars exhales methane, our hearts race and our minds slam on the brakes. If it's biological, we're hearing the whisper of something breathing. If it's geological, it's still fascinating. It indicates a chemically active planet with underground processes that haven't died out. With the rivers, the key lies in the pattern. Sudden spikes, specific locations, rapid disappearances. On Earth, living sources often produce rhythms and seasonality. Geological sources, other traces. Other times, on Mars, the methane clock seems capricious. It appears like a whispered secret and vanishes before confirm it. Ion, whatever the origin, the message is the same. The red planet isn't static. It's still doing things, and that, in itself, is a game changer. Could Mars be exuding signs of life? If it's life, it's not a scream, it's a breath. A tiny breath escaping through cracks in the subsurface, as if ancient microbes were still there, consuming minerals, returning a wisp of methane to the air before retreating into the darkness. A planet breathing softly, almost imperceptibly, begging us to come closer. But perhaps it's the rock itself that breathes, infiltrated water reacting with olivine, serpentinization igniting chemical reactions that mimic metabolism. Even the mineral's appearance has a rhythm, and it's this rhythm that intrigues. Why does it appear suddenly? Why does it disappear quickly? Why does it return at specific points, as if following a routine? Whether biology or geology, the gesture is the same, exhaling. Something down there is happening now, not in the distant past of the craters, but in the nervous present of the subsurface. And when a world thought to be dead blows something skyward, the question changes in intensity. It's no longer is there life? It's what is alive enough to leave footprints in the air. And why do methane peaks mysteriously disappear? Because Mars is a stage with cruel lights. Ultraviolet radiation cuts through the gas high in the atmosphere, breaking apart molecules like someone erasing traces. Because the Martian wind is a merciless editor, It dilutes, spreads, mixes, and what seemed like a scream becomes a whisper in minutes. Because oxidizing soil can act like a chemical sponge, sucking up methane and returning silence. Because dust is just dust, it carries reagents, changes the air chemistry, and accelerates disappearance. There's also the planet's own clock, intermittent springs that open and close, fissures that breathe only when the temperature allows, salts and ice that release and trap according to the seasons. And in the midst of it all, our instruments precise, but human trying to measure a ghost that prefers the shadows. The disappearance is a miracle. It's a process. The methane rises, is broken down, diluted, absorbed, transformed. The trail remains short, capricious, irritating. And it's precisely this brief dance that forces us to return. If the signal disappears so quickly, it's because something is producing it now. To this day, no one has been able to explain it. There are hypotheses many. None of them closes all the doors. Each attempt at an answer solves one piece and opens two more. Methane disappears too quickly, appears where it wasn't expected, dances outside the rhythm of the models. Organic molecules appear in the right rocks, but with signatures that refuse to acknowledge their origin. The structures tell the story of water, but leave gaps where we most need certainty. It's the kind of mystery that both irritates and fascinates. The more you illuminate it, the more shadows appear at the edges. It's not a lack of data, it's an excess of nuances. The planet says almost. The instruments hear maybe. And between almost and maybe, science moves forward patiently, stubbornly, without shortcuts. Perhaps the explanation exists, buried just inches from where we dug. Perhaps it depends on a sample already sealed in a tube, awaiting return to Earth. Perhaps it requires a question we don't yet know how to formulate. Until then, let's stick with what matters. The enigma is alive, and living enigmas have a habit. They don't disappear, they call us back. Images from the high-rise satellite, the camera that sees Mars in breathtaking detail reveal mind-boggling shapes. Rocky mesas with geometric faces that resemble pyramids, long, narrow ridges that look like tunnels through the skin, and circular openings in the terrain that sound like cave entrances. Up close, the explanation can be stark yet fascinating. And mesas carved by ancient winds, yardangs carved like blades, inverted channels where ancient riverbeds have become stone spines. The caves, often skylights, collapses in the ceilings of lava tunnels or shafts that have collapsed into subterranean voids. The low-lying light creates angles. The shadow completes the illusion. Nature, patient, plays at architecture, but the visual impact is real. The brain recognizes pattern before accepting process. We see intention where there is geology. Still, the invitation is irresistible. What if beneath these openings lie galleries protected from radiati, cool, dry, perfect for preserving signs of the past? What if the tunnels are not passages, but vaults? High-rise doesn't scream civilization. It whispers shelter. It shows places where life, if it existed or persists, could have found shade, stability, and time. And on Mars, these three together are almost a promise. Could it just be pareidolia, or something that science is not yet ready to admit? Our brain is a pattern machine. It finds faces in clouds, animals in constellations, messages in noise. On Mars, with low light and long shadows, imagination becomes a lens, an angle becomes an edge, a collapse becomes a door, a hill becomes a pyramid. It's healthy to doubt. Nature doesn't need intentions to build cathedrals. But there's a blind spot on the other side, the fear of seeing too much. Sometimes, rigor disguises itself as a shield and calls an illusion what deserves investigation. The risk is choosing a side, at stopping asking questions. Between mirage and mystery lies fertile territory, measuring better, returning to a different light, comparing materials, drilling, smelling the air, listening to the subsurface. Pareidolia protects against fantasy. Perseverance protects against conformity. They may not be pyramids or tunnels made by hands, but they could be refuges. Geological vaults where time, shadow, and stability have preserved stories we still don't know how to read. The right question is it artificial? It's what's worth opening here. Because on Mars, the greatest danger isn't believing too much. It's missing the point. A former NASA scientist stated, "Life on Mars may not have disappeared. It has simply learned to hide." He wasn't talking about buried cities or machines forgotten in the desert. He was talking about the small, about microbes that choose the shade, about metabolisms as slow as winter, about biofilms clinging to rock where radiation can't reach. He was talking about crevices that breathe when the temperature allows, about salts that stir water like vaults, about caves that are more shelter than mystery. According to him, the mistake is searching in the wrong place, at the wrong pace, and with the wrong tools. Shy life doesn't like the spotlight. It leaves discrete signatures, unusual isotopes, organic patterns that can't be explained by mineralogy alone, small pulses of gas that disappear before the photo is taken. And then he concluded, almost in a whisper, if you want answers from Mars, stop asking questions as if everything were a desert. Ask as if you were entering a library in the dark. Touch the spines, feel the dust, and be patient. Maybe it's not about proving tomorrow. Maybe it's about learning to listen to a planet that responds quietly. Life on Mars may be extinct or in hiding. Extinct, erased by the cold that grew slowly, by the atmosphere that slowly disappeared, by the radiation that burned away what was fragile. Only chemical signatures remained, fossils of the invisible. Memories trapped in rocks that were once mud, or hidden, shrunken underground, living in the gap between ice and rock. Slow, silent metabolisms, respiring when the temperature allows, microbes clinging to salts, sheltered in caves, leaving minimal traces, a whiff of methane, an organic pattern, a stubborn noise in the data. Between the tomb and the refuge, there is a third path, active memory. We don't see creatures, we see consequences. We don't hear voices, we hear echoes. And that's why we return. Because a planet that once had water and time may have chosen, faced with the desert, not to disappear, just to remain still. If Mars remains silent, it wasn't to deny, it was to preserve. And those who preserve wait for someone who knows how to ask slowly. In 2020, ESA announced possible underground saltwater lakes beneath the Martian South Pole. These aren't pools of water. Under a red sky, they're brines hidden in the dark, locked beneath miles of ice, detected like bright echoes by a radar that penetrates layers and returns clues. Down there, light doesn't reach, radiation doesn't rule, the cold is brutal, but solidity lowers the freezing point, and the water remains liquid as if Mars were guarding tiny winter hearts. Underground lakes signify time and stability. They signify slowly circulating chemicals, dissolved nutrients, mineral surfaces where molecules like to cling. For microbial life, this is shelter, an ice ceiling against radiation, a thermal blanket against violent variations, a more patient rhythm than the surface desert. If there is anything alive there, it won't be grand, it will be stubborn. Microbes that awaken slowly, that metabolize minimally, that leave discrete signatures, biased isotopes, trace gases, subtle organic patterns. And even if there is no life now, these lakes are natural vaults. They preserve chemical memories of a wetter Mars, storing pages that the surface would have already erased. The announcement isn't an end, it's a map. It points to the regions worth drilling, where it's worth listening to the subsurface, where the search ceases to be a dream and becomes a plan. Beneath the ice of the South Pole, Mars seems to be saying, if you want answers, knock here. I've hidden what's fragile where the desert can't reach, liquid water, protected from radiation, the ideal habitat for microbial life. Beneath the ice, time moves slowly. Light doesn't hurt. Radiation doesn't corrode. There, water isn't a memory, it's a presence. Dense brines, cold, yet alive enough to carry nutrients. Rocks that offer surfaces where molecules cling, react, and repeat until repetition becomes a chemical habit. For microbes, this is a minimalist paradise. Low but constant energy, shelter from the chaos of the surface. A clock that allows for slow, almost meditative metabolisms. They wouldn't need much, a chemical source, a suitable mineral, a thermal break. Nature patiently takes care of the rest, even without creatures in sight. A place like this holds signatures, strange isotope ratios, discrete gas leaks, organic matter too organized to be mere chance. It's the kind of setting where life doesn't put on a show, it thrives. Liquid water under a roof of ice. A closed library filled with pages the desert couldn't tear. If there's a corner of Mars where life could have chosen to dwell, it's in this protected silence. What if something is still there? Not a monster beneath the ice, not a sleeping city, something small. Tissues of life the size of dust, breathing slowly in the darkness, like nearly extinguished candles that insist on not dying. Microbes trapped in minerals, drawing energy from silent reactions, waking when the temperature allows and returning to hibernation when the cold bites. Imagine drilling into ice and hearing a chemical crackle that doesn't match rock alone, feeling a whiff of gas that washed in. The calculations, seeing organic patterns where we only expected salt. It wouldn't be a spectacle, it would be evidence, proof that life doesn't need sunlight to exist. It needs shelter, time, and stubbornness. And if something is still there, it's not just Mars that's changing, it's us. We're no longer a rare accident and have become a chapter in a broader rule. Where there's water, shelter, and patience, life tries, and almost always succeeds. The mystery is far from over. Each answer opens to more doors. A gas peak that disappears too quickly, a molecule where it shouldn't exist, a rock that tells the story of water but skips the main chapter. It's like putting together a puzzle with pieces from different planets, and yet the image insists on forming something. The next steps are already outlined. Drill deeper, bring back samples, listen to the subsurface as if pressing an ear to an ancient wall. Compare isotopes, track leaks, map caverns that may have been vaults. Mars isn't a puzzle to be solved in a video, it's a decades-long conversation. And that's why we don't stop. Because when a world thought to be dead keeps leaving us clues, the only honest course of action is to keep following the trail. The mystery doesn't end, it evolves. And if we keep up with this pace, perhaps the next piece won't just be curious, it'll be definitive. Every new piece of data that comes from Mars seems to say, look again, there's more here. A chemical spectrum shifts a decimal point and suddenly, an entire story needs to be retold. An image in a different light reveals an angle that wasn't there yesterday. A gas peak appears, disappears, reappears. It's the planet nudging us on the shoulder and whispering that haste is the enemy of precision. Look again at the rocks that were once mud. Look again at the silence that is not silence, but pause. Look again at the shadows that seem like doors, and at the doors that only open with better questions. Because each number that crosses the void isn't an end, it's an invitation. And invitations, on Mars, never arrive alone. They always bring a trail of clues asking for patience, courage, and one more look. And the question that won't go away: if life found shelter, water, and weather on Mars, why would it have left? What if she never left, she just moved down a few steps, learned to breathe in the dark? It's no longer a question of if it exists. It's where to look, how to listen, what to accept as evidence. Because if the answer is buried just a few inches in the wrong place, it's our haste that's deceiving us, not Mars. So, back to the point, has it gone extinct, or is it hiding? Until we prove it, the planet repeats. Take a closer look. Did life never leave Mars, just learn to hide? Perhaps it descended a few meters, embracing the salt and ice, breathing through cold crevices and basalt pores. Perhaps it slowed down to a winter metabolism, waking up when the temperature allows and falling silent when radiation hits. Perhaps it's embedded in invisible biofilms, feeding on reactions between rock and water, a chemical breath that escapes in methane spikes before disappearing into the wind. If so, we won't see stone cathedrals, we'll see discrete signatures, unusual isotopes, stubborn organics in the right layers, whispers that instruments capture but the rush doesn't understand. Because life, when cornered, doesn't put on a show, it survives. Mars may not be empty. It may be quiet, and quiet, in science, is not absence, it is invitation. If this video made you question reality, stay with us until the end of this journey. Like now and subscribe to Curionatas. It's not just support, it's a vote in favor of big questions. Share with those you know who face the unknown head-on, and comment on which clue gave you the most thrill. Here, curiosity isn't a pastime, it's a method. And if this chapter sparked something in you, the next one will take you a step further: the oceanic moons and the secrets they hide. Welcome to the crew. You're not just watching a video, you're helping to write the story of how we discovered that we were never alone. You are a Curionaut now. This means your compass is doubt, your fuel is curiosity, and your destination is the unknown. Here, we don't travel in a straight line, we orbit ideas. Land on questions, collect clues, and take off again. When you comment, ask questions, and share, you're not just watching, you're piloting this mission. Every like is a signal sent. Every subscription means more reach for the questions that matter. We're a crew, you, me, and everyone who prefers courage to comfort. So adjust your helmet, sharpen your gaze, and remember this mantra, look again. Because where most see desert, a Curionata sees archive. Where they see silence, you hear whispers. Where they see an end, you see a beginning. Welcome aboard. From now on, the sky isn't the limit, it's the map. And the journey is just beginning. We still have deltas to decipher, caves to map, brines to listen to. We have sealed samples awaiting their return flight. Specters asking for new readings. Signals that whisper when the rush subsides. Each step opens 3 paths, each answer 2 questions. Buckle up, adjust your gaze. The ship heads into the darkness, not out of bravado, but out of method. Where most see desert, we'll see archive. Where they see silence, we'll hear standard. Where they say impossible, well, right, not yet. Mars is just the first chapter. The rest of the book is spread out across the sky, and we just turned the first page.